Hello and welcome to the Family Business. I'm Joe Castiglione Jr. alongside Isaac Stoops. We're here down in Scoop Studios in historic Campus Corner. Not buzzing like a game day, but it's exciting time. Today we bring in the guy who is yelling in the back of the behind the booth or behind the call video. The guy yelling in the back of Toby Rowland's call, Joe Castiglione. He's also known as my father. You may know him as that. You may know him as a couple other things. I don't know. You can call him whatever you want. I call him Big Dog. But we have him in the studios today, and he was yelling in that video. But you know what else is worth yelling about? Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is the official Sooner apparel partner of Soonerscoop.com. If you want to head over to homefieldapparel.com, use code SCOOP. You're going to get 15% off your first order. I'm actually wearing the stuff today. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Great quality. I'm wearing this nice little Boomer Sooner Retro OU shirt, and then they're going to come out with a little bit of new pullovers, right, Isaac?
Yeah, there's 90s themed pullovers for each college coming out. I believe OU's is coming out on October 24th, so make sure to keep your eye out for that, and make sure you go get you one.
You can just take a look at those, and those are beautiful. That has early November, late November home game written all over it.
The material looks like warm, like it'll.
No, it'll keep you warm. It kind of looks like just retro jackets. No, really good quality stuff. I just got a big order from them in this past week, and I just love the material, love the quality. So if you want to head over to Home Field Apparel, use code SCOOP. You're going to get 15% off your first order. It's Thursday. There's no home game this Saturday, but that just gives us more time to gear up for OU Texas week next week. What are you most excited about, Isaac?
I don't know, a lot. I mean, I've been to that. Like, I love the fair. I go to the fair because I like to eat. I like the food, but I'm really just excited for the game itself. It feels like forever ago that we played them. I mean, obviously it's been a whole year, but just excited to see our team, hopefully somewhat healthy after the bye week, and just kind of build off the momentum of last week and see what we can do.
It is really exciting. They're coming in this year with kind of that same underdog role that they did last year, kind of maybe a bigger underdog. According to the betting markets, depends where you look. Yeah. And so they kind of have the attitude. No, it's going to be really exciting. And like I know George said multiple times, like anybody who's seen this game play out for their entire life, you never know really what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so you can throw all the records, all the statistics, and so it's going to boil down on 2:30 Saturday at the Cotton Bowl. I don't know what's going to happen.
2:30, thank you.
No, 2:30, thank you.
That's what I'm most excited for, is not getting up at 8 a.m. and –
No, I know. There's going to be a lot more time to go in the fair, ride the rides.
For better or worse.
Wax cup beers. We'll be consuming a few of those, or 12. A couple of corn dogs, and it'll be well actioned.
It'll be balanced out.
2:30. Yeah. There is also a mustard beer. There's a Fletcher's mustard beer.
You can't do that.
I had some well-placed sources go to the State Fair yesterday. They tried it. They said it's okay.
We'll have a review on here the week after.
We will have the mustard beer of Fletcher's corn dogs. So we have Big Joe in studio. Really exciting. We had to push him back on the counter a little bit. He's been begging. I said, we'll get you on the show. We'll get you on the show. Don't worry. We didn't forget about you. But we got him in studio today. Mm-hmm. And so that was fantastic. We covered a number of topics. And so we're going to take you to the episode right now with OU Athletics Director Joe Castiglione. We now welcome in Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics, Joe Castiglione. He's also known as my father, Big Joe. Even though I've tried to steal the Big Joe name for a while now. I'm trying to be bigger than you, so you can be Little Joe.
In some circles I am.
I got to out-angle you, too. So make sure you get the camera up. Yeah, we brought you on today to talk about the vice presidential debate. What you thought about that? Any comments on conflicts in the Middle East?
Yes. I think that is not what our audience wants to hear.
We'll get straight into it then. Bye week, OU Texas coming up. What's your favorite tradition of OU Texas, outside of the football game itself?
Ooh, there's several. I'd say, although it wouldn't be considered a tradition, just the bus ride into the game. It's different every year, but it does have its similarities. And depending on where the police escort brings the team buses through which street, and some of the streets are crowded more than others. Obviously, you see your Sooner fans and they're cheering, and then the Texas fans are giving us the one
Yeah.
finger salute, and then to get into the fairgrounds, and it just if the adrenaline rush wasn't already with you, it happens. But I would say next to that is, we could say having a corn dog and all. When you all were smaller, and before or after the game, you have a chance to enjoy the state fair. There are a lot of things you could talk about there, but probably the best one is standing down in the tunnel when the teams come on the field for kickoff. Boy, even when I think about it, it just makes the hair stand up on my arms, and it's just really a moment. And I think if you talk to a lot of players, they always, outside the games themselves and the moments in those games, they go back to something like that. Just the whole feeling of coming out on the field for the kickoff.
Yeah, the locker rooms face each other. So I remember growing up seeing them, because one team comes out first, but they'll be holding back them, and there's just a lot of chirp going on. And it's like, we're finally here.
It's the perfect situation for that. That, and then when the Texas team comes out, they throw up the curtains, and you can feel it. That's why it was so easy, even though it was 11 a.m. kick, a lot of these times, it was so easy to get amped up because you got all these little things that contribute to the adrenaline rush. And then even after the game, it's kind of an interesting dynamic because, like you said, the locker rooms are 20 feet apart, and so you have one people in agony, like distress, upset, and then you have people celebrating over here, and they're just right next to each other.
And even before the games, the bands come through the same tunnel to get onto the field, and they stop right by the locker rooms and play. And of course, the acoustics there is just a bunch of concrete with the sound bouncing off it. It's so loud, So all of those different things, it never gets old. I almost had, though, one tradition that probably would have gone on if I had done it the first time. But after, what would you say, pleading from Mom that I wouldn't do it, I wanted to celebrate one of the big wins we had by getting on the, it wasn't called a ride. It was like a bungee cord.
Like the ones that
it's like a flat slingshot. That's it. It's like it stretches you out parallel to the ground.
The ride at the fair,
and then it takes you up like this at an angle, and then it lets it go, and it just is a big swing, and it takes you way out there, and then it comes back, and it finally settles down. I wanted to get on there and celebrate that
full suit.
Yeah,
that'd be so good.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and so. But there was not a lot of support to do that. Thought it was way over the line, and my wife was probably right.
No, I would have killed to see a video of that after the game. People always stop you anyways, and then But you're not a man that's afraid of heights.
No. Although we did said the closest thing to celebrating something on one of the rides is I took Joe's brother Jonathan, who you know well, and we went up into the Ferris wheel. And Jonathan is not afraid of heights either, except we get all the way to the top and it starts raining and the Ferris wheel stops. And I don't mean just for a second, it's stuck. And we're just looking down, and of course, you're way up there and you're looking out at the skyline of the city of Dallas, and you're looking at the Midway and all of that, and there's just a bunch of service techs trying to figure out how to get it going. And I remembered, even though Jonathan was not afraid of heights, it was getting a little unnerving the longer we sat up there. We probably sat up there for 15 or 20 minutes before they got it fixed. But we were literally at the highest point you could be, and then the rain is coming in. So that didn't work out very well either.
There's just so much to that game. I mean, I know the list of foods they come out with each year. The churro cheesecake on a steak is one I'm eyeing this year. I had the Biscoff last year. It was fantastic. And so you get to try all those Friday
That is actually a favorite tradition for Friday, not the day of the game, but for Friday. For as long as I can remember, we've had what's called Taste of the State Fair. And I have a sort of ritual that you go through. You get over there to do a walkthrough from, examining the field, the locker room, just the whole setup for game day to make sure things are where they're supposed to be. And usually, they're taking the stadium and transforming it into what we require. It's just not a stadium that has a lot of football games. They have one usually before ours, but we have a certain level of requirements that they have to meet. So I do the walkthrough from the field through the stands and press box. And when that's done, I've started sampling some of the winners of that particular year's state fair. So the food winners. And it started as one or two, and then each year they kept bringing me the past winners as well. And so now it's literally a huge table of taste of the state fair. And they have the top 3 entries to the competition of that year, is obviously one including the winner. And then some of the hottest selling items that they've had, in the state fair that year. And you'd sort of just sample them all. As I've gone on, I've brought more and more people. So on Friday afternoon, it's a taste of the state fair. And then we kind of, check out a few things on the midway. And then I have to go to a lot of the Friday evening events, the gatherings that various entities have. So you make a swing through there.
It's also a lot for a lot of people that don't know. It's usually your birthday too. It kind of butts
It's
up with
happened
this
quite
year's the
often.
way it worked out. But October 8th is his birthday, and so it's either on the day of, day before, or day after,
Yeah.
and so
It's the only birthday gift I ever won.
yeah, exactly, golden hat. Something else that's kind of interesting too is I wanted to talk about your relationship with Chris Del Conte. Because this is such an intense week back and forth, and with the move to the SEC, going with Texas, and so leaning on him and vice versa. So I just want to talk about a little bit about what have you guys kind of discussed in the last 3 years coming into the SEC, and just speak to your relationship as well with CDC.
Well, having a friendship with the athletics director at the University of Texas isn't a new thing for me, because I had and still do have a long-time friendship with DeLoss Dodds, who was the athletics director at Texas when I came to Oklahoma. Very few people in Oklahoma or Texas knew that we were good friends beforehand, and so they were a little bit surprised that we were, that close of friends, and we are. And so there have been some different ADs since DeLoss retired, but Chris Del Conte's friendship really goes back to late 90s, maybe 2000-ish, when I got to know him, and I actually tried to hire him at Oklahoma. He was the deputy AD for development at the University of Arizona. And I really tried to get him here. He worked for another close friend of mine who was the athletic director at Arizona, and that was tough. And it didn't work out for him to join me here at Oklahoma. But certainly we've been close friends for a long time. And
He's called you brother too. As
yeah,
well.
I mean, we do. We call each other brothers from a different mother. But he, when the athletics director job at Rice opened up, Rice was the first full-time job I ever had coming right out of college. And so I had a lot of friends there. And I told him, I said, if you can get Chris Del Conte from the University of Arizona, you would have yourself one heck of an athletic director. And he ends up, not just because of that, but, that he ends up becoming the athletic director at Rice. And, we just share a lot. And when he ends up at TCU, we're going through conference realignment after Missouri and Texas A&M left. And, of course, there were a lot of options. And I was talking to Chris about what he would need to consider to get TCU in the Big 12. And there's a lot of fun stories about that, including his trip to see DeLoss Dodds.
What a foreshadow that was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But turned out that TCU became a member of the Big 12. And so we got to work together once their membership was official. But he never told me he was being interviewed for the job at the University of Texas until the story was about to break. And I just it just got all over. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, obviously I wasn't going to stop you, but why do I have to hear it from somebody else? So we've literally have just a real special friendship, and here we are at two iconic universities, and both very, very successful athletic programs. And as a lot of people have heard, when we were paying attention to what was taking place behind the scenes in college athletics about 8, 10, 12 years ago, and how things were evolving, they were as well. And we were he wasn't at Texas at the time, but when he did become AD, we started just having basic conversations about what the world ahead could look like. And we were certainly focused on how we would try to be really, really great in the Big 12 and help the conference continue to be great. And we did that until we saw things really changing in such a dramatic way. And both of us have responsibilities as leaders of our program to exercise what we feel is best for our programs. And it's not just the athletic directors. Obviously, we're just one part of it. It's the presidents of our university. It's the boards of our university. And they've asked us and charged us with the leadership of a program. But decisions like that are made at the highest level possible.
About the origin stories at the SEC and the conversations, I mean, maybe the statute of limitations hasn't expired yet, but what can you tell us about the original stories of the birth of the Oklahoma-Texas SEC joining? Exactly, you're thinking up right now. I can tell he's thinking up something.
I don't know that the statute of limitations has expired. Or I keep saying that, I'm gonna put too much of the content out there that I won't have much to put in my book when it's all said.
Your book is gonna be really good. It's gonna be really good.
What would you say then? I guess with fall sports wise, our first month in the SEC. What how has it gone? Have you any surprises? Just kind of walk us through that.
Well, Isaac, it's actually been a tremendous transition. Now, of course, we had a few years to plan it. We did go a year earlier than was originally intended, but that was created because the world itself around us changed, and it actually incentivized the Big 12 to talk to us about an earlier departure so they could get on with some of the plans they had for their own conference, which later on included expanding by 4 more universities. And we get all that. And we had to work on an interim solution to join the SEC a year early. There are some things that go with that, including financial considerations that were both related to our exit from the Big 12 and going to the SEC a year early. So in other words, we're a full voting member in every other way, but we do not receive a full revenue share this year. The full revenue share does not start until next year. Okay. So we had to understand that. But when you think about the big picture, we play the long ball in our world of visioning the future of college athletics. I know we got to take care of the moment and the issues of the moment, but you also have to think about the long term. It has been validated over and over and over and over again what an important and transformative move this was for the University of Oklahoma. I don't know that we had the Pac-12 imploding on our bingo card.
No. Well, they're rebirthed.
We did. Yeah. Well, yeah. We did have
you call that
massive changes that we could see happening. But going back to your original question, all of that with the backstory, as we became more and more involved in the transition and what we could control on our own campus and plan for, as well as the benefit of the SEC starting to include us in some of the meetings leading up to our year of membership, especially we didn't have a vote, but we were able to go to meetings and talk about the future scheduling, things that would happen, once we were members. It really helped make it truly a natural fit. So the part about the earliest entry into the SEC, it just feels natural. Even last week, our first SEC road game, our first SEC win, the fans at Auburn were fantastic. And they actually reminded us of Oklahoma fans, that they were really welcoming. Now, they had a great environment inside their stadium, and, of course, it was very raucous for their team. But just out amongst the campus and the tailgate scene, which was really terrific, they were great. And I talked to a lot of fans, all of which I didn't know before, but you see them, as you know, you've gone to these games, and they were very complimentary about the Auburn fans and the campus and the whole setup. And just as the Tennessee fans were about Oklahoma fans the week before. I mean, they're still talking about their experience at Oklahoma and the way they were treated. Again, the game aside, the setting, the atmosphere, the pageantry, they were all very, very highly complimentary of it. And I think we're going to see that more and more. There may be a couple of exceptions, we don't know, but more and more I think we'll see that, both from new fans coming to Norman and Oklahoma, as well as us traveling.
There may be one later on the schedule that I plan on going to as well, that they may not be as welcoming.
Right.
Rhymes with Baton Rouge.
No, that's it. I mean, I remember 2004 Sugar Bowl, so I'm just a kid, would have been 8 or 9.
Yeah, I was
8 or
5,
9.
yeah.
And they were screaming at my mom and I and my brother. I mean, I think we got spit on a few times. Learned the middle finger that game.
My mom has some bad stories about that one too.
Yeah, it was an experience. And you never want to play LSU in New Orleans. It just comes down to that. But
it'd be cool though, yeah.
But it was really cool seeing last week, and I think the Oklahoma fans have kind of rose up to the call a little bit as well.
They have.
Between College game day, the atmosphere of the game, even though the result wasn't what we wanted, I thought they were fantastic during the game. College game day, the atmosphere, it kind of seems that they've leveled up too. They kind of answered the call.
100%. And candidly, it requires us to do that. We have to up our game, and our fans did in every way possible. That game day setting around Tennessee was elite, completely elite, and it showcased the best of Oklahoma in ways that we dreamed of, and we could not be more grateful. Like you said, from the earliest wee hours of the morning before game day went on the air, people were there and locked in. And then it carried through the rest of the day to the atmosphere. In fact, during the ABC telecast, they broke in and started talking about the noise level at Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, saying this is unlike anything we've seen in years. In fact, in the last couple of years, the only one they could remember was a game a couple of years ago at LSU. And the decibel levels were ridiculous. So it shows that our fans can really rise up and be the standard as there is in college football.
One last thing on SEC real fast. I know this week it was kind of a breaking story that there's a discussion of the Big Ten SEC scheduling alliance right now. I mean, can you talk to that anything right now? Or, I mean, I know right now, Big Ten, SEC are kind of the two forefront runners of college football. So is there anything you can say about that right now?
I think some of that has really gotten mischaracterized. It's not unusual for two conferences to talk about a scheduling relationship.
Sure. They
have 18. We have 16.
It's a lot of teams.
We in the case of football, a good number of the future non-conference schedules have already been set. I mean, I have opportunities to look at scheduling games now in 2038 and 2040. So, I mean, that's how far out you look, especially for the marquee games.
Yeah.
So we could schedule any team we want, and we have. You've grown up here. You've seen what we've done. Alabama years ago, Florida State, Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State,
Cincinnati one year.
Yeah, which, by the way, that was right around the time they played in a BCS game. They were really, really good. Brian Kelly was a coach.
Yeah, they almost beat us at home. Yeah.
And we've got a really huge SEC Big Ten matchup next year with the University of Michigan coming to Norman, and then we go to Ann Arbor the year later. But we have Nebraska on the schedule later in the decade. That's another great series for us. That's a SEC Big Ten matchup. I say all of that because you don't necessarily need a meeting to do that, but if there are options like that where we can consider creative scheduling.
Is it kind of an encouragement more than like a firm deal in this instance?
In what
Between
way?
the conferences, is it almost like encouragement, like we want to come together and we know that these are the best matchups for television, and so we're going to encourage y'all to kind of schedule them? Or is it a discussion of like an actual deal, handshake deal?
I think conversations can lead a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
There's certainly nothing on the table, of that sort.
I mean, it's early.
Yeah,
Early.
We have a 2-conference challenge that we have going on right now with the SEC and the ACC in men's and women's basketball. We had one previously when we were in the Big 12 with the SEC. So these are not unprecedented kinds of conversations. They've happened. But we also, what's that?
The Alliance.
Yeah, let's have that work out.
Not great.
Yeah, and not very long. So, however, I do want to say something that, we're all very mindful of the chaotic, disruptive environment that we're in right now in college athletics, and all of us in college athletics are working as best we can through lawyers to try and settle a $1 billion class action lawsuit, and that's been written about. We don't need to go into the details, but when we're getting together in meetings like this, we have to be abundantly careful not to talk about certain things. So we cannot discuss things that could be in some way, shape, or form ever considered colluding with each other, because that would be a antitrust type of violation. So those conversations will have lawyers in the room to make sure that we stay well within the boundaries legally we can. But there are things about the game, to enforcement of new rules, to certain kinds of topics that you can discuss, that are more holistic but don't have necessarily a financial tie to them.
I was gonna ask, just talking about the legalities of college football, and the NIL landscape is constantly changing. Recently, I don't know if you saw, I think it was last week, the UNLV quarterback situation. That's kind of the first I've seen that happen, and then the running back follows, and then the D lineman for USC. How can college football as a whole, how do you prevent that? What needs to take place?
That's a great question, and we're challenged right now because we don't have a structure, and that's a real problem. I mean, I could sit here and say we would rather have contracts. We'd like to have performance bonuses in contracts. We'd like to, be able to sit down with an athlete and determine what rights we're getting and what they'd be giving up, and how much that would be worth. And they know, we know, and there's a contract that, basically crystallizes all of that, memorializes it, so both parties know, and you go forward and everybody understands what each side is signed up for. And you can make it 1 year, you can make it multi-year. We don't have the ability to do that. Right now, we don't even have the ability to sit down and negotiate a deal, let alone, have the contract, because that has to be a conversations that take place outside. Now, the rules are evolving, changing. In the last year, there's been newer interpretations that allow us to be more involved than we were able to be involved previously. And then if this goes forward, through the settlement of this lawsuit, and some of the provisions of the lawsuit are accepted, it will give us the opportunity to sit down and truly talk about sharing revenue that we generate holistically because of the entities that have great interest, and sponsors are willing to pay whatever. We have TV contracts, etc. We can share a portion of that revenue with athletes, and then we can memorialize it. But right now it's in that murky world of collectives, and yet I could also sit here and talk about how many just tremendous new agreements that have developed with businesses and athletes. And I don't know, we don't want to start talking about sponsors that are not part of your show, but let's just say that there are more and more local businesses have gotten comfortable with making deals with athletes to do this or that, come to, a showroom, be there for an hour, do certain things on social media. We have a big, just whatever the agreement is, cars, banks, insurance, food, restaurants. We've had a situation with a huge law firm that they created their own content, which is like Judge Judy. You have a judge, and then they'd have two athletes, at two different podiums arguing point counterpoint. Yeah. That's fabulous content, and that's all being, created and compensation can be derived for the athletes from something like that, and it's fun. And so I think those kinds of things have really evolved in a positive way in the last couple of years, and we can help that. We go out and we're educating businesses all the time, recruiting businesses. We don't get involved in the actual conversation between an athlete and the business and that business relationship, but we can bring the parties together, and that way they can get together. So we're trying to be very proactive in that space. And then on the side of it, the education, financial literacy, business law, there are a lot of athletes that sign contracts that don't really understand what they're signing. So we can help in all those ways, and we've tried to make sure that we're present in those spaces.
It's kind of an interesting parallel because there might be a hunger from the industry or the fans for more content like that. And I don't think you could say that 10 years ago, but now because of the transfer portal and the movement and stuff, I feel like fans don't think they're as close and know the players as well. And so they're kind of, some of that content stuff can kind of fit that void a little bit, just because you got a new roster each year, and so you try to learn those people. So there is kind of a hunger for that. So it's kind of
and I think it's great. For those who've been following this for a long, long time, even before NIL became permissible, these are kinds of things that we should not have been fighting for the number of years. That we could have had a much more orderly approach to this, and it makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure that in a world of organizing it better years ago that we would have seen a collective concept evolve, because the campuses could have basically helped develop this for the athletes. So I've never been one that's been against any athlete making something extra off of what they bring to the table for their sport. I think it's great. I just think the lack of a structure is what's created this problem we have. And I really think we have to be progressive minded in finding the solutions. The lawsuit settlement itself will not fix the problem entirely. That's a temporary fix. So the best thought leaders in the business have to continue to stay connected to find the longer term solution.
One of the things that I think keeps a locker room together or from pulling apart just in all the craziness that is college football now is the man in charge. And so that's why I have so much admiration for Coach Venables. And I was going to ask what is your guys' relationship like?
Well, it's great. I've known him ever since he stepped foot on campus, back in I guess it was maybe January of 98 and 99, right after I hired your father. And really he and Julie, and then watching their family grow.
We were all running around.
I mean, I can talk about you guys at various ages, and then we're all together at bowl games and the crazy football games that used to occur, and figuring out which one was going to come back with a scrape, or worse yet, something broken.
It's bound to happen.
But that was all really great. I remember one time I had to go pick up Joe's brother Jonathan from Mommy's Day Out, and Jonathan and Jake Venables were sound asleep, and their backs were like right together. I mean, they grew up and they did sports together, like with you. Jonathan, you guys were all together, and that's really a fun thing. And so obviously, got to know Brent really well, and when the opening occurred, and had the conversations that we had, it's been really awesome having him on this campus, and with his experience, the pedigree, he's been around, not only here, Kansas State, Clemson, he's been around three
Good
iconic
programs.
head football coaches. I mean, three of the best that the sport has ever or will ever see. And, now he is one. And, evolving as a head coach, building a program with his vision. As you know, he's very relational. He understands what the state-of-the-art elements are in college football, but he also tries to keep it grounded with those characteristics that are going to mean the most for a person's life, well beyond the sport. And it's very intentional about that. It's not just, hey, I'll get up and say that as a speech, make it sound good. It's very intentional about not only having a plan, but actually having activities that reflect the plan. And so I just have so much confidence in him. I'm working with him every day. We didn't have a learning curve to get to know each other, but like with any of my head coaches, I've had this line that I've used, but it's really more symbolic of how it works. That once I hire a coach and they come to work for our university, there are a lot of people in the mix, support staff, their own assistants, whoever's all geared toward helping that sport or our whole athletic program be successful. But for me as an AD, my job is just for them is just like I have for the athletes. What am I doing every day to put them in the best position to be successful? So my line is, once you go to work for me, I immediately go to work for you. And forget the hierarchy. We're all here as a partnership. How can I help you be successful? And then we work on trying to get better at what we're doing.
You sound like servant leadership right now.
That is what it is.
I know. Just kind of one thing to build off that real fast is I know, from being led by you by growing up, I know you're not a micromanager, and like you just said, you're more of a servant leadership type of style. And so how often, during a season, would you meet with the head coach or would you meet with Brent? Because you're not going to control them, but, just to meet,
Well, and it goes back to when I was working with Isaac's father, Bob. I want to be present. I want him to know that we're right there as a resource 24/7, but I don't ever want to crowd him. Yeah. So, during the season, it's as needed, but I always have at least a once a week check-in. Mm-hmm. So we'll meet. It might be 15 minutes. It might be 30. It might be 45. Usually not more than that, because as you know, you guys played the sport, you've been as a player, you know how regimented every day is from the moment they hit campus to, practice is over and whatever they have to do after practice. So I'm very respectful of that. So I don't try to crowd any of that, especially during the season. But there might be things like this week. I've already met with Coach Venables on the I don't think I'm breaking any news saying this, but again, talking about the progressive nature of our athletic program, how we're going to look at an entirely new way of player identification, assessment, and recruitment and roster management. Because at some point, very soon, we're going to be dealing with a salary cap type of situation. It's not identical to the NFL or any other professional sports. We recruit, they draft. There are a lot of different dynamics, but it's not news because we did announce it many months ago, or I guess 4 months ago now, that we hired the associate general manager of the Philadelphia Eagles to help us put personnel system together. And you also heard about the hiring and moving Curtis Lofton into a general manager. So we have we have our player personnel side, and you have the administrative side. So Woody Glass is the chief of staff and deals with all the administrative elements, and those are varied and many. Yeah. But just like on the other side,
scope.
that Curtis is dealing with the player personnel from grading the tape and working with the coaches and the recruitment and the unofficial visits, official visits, all the different elements around recruiting. But then we have this new world hitting us where how are you going to manage your compensation with your players when there's a cap in place? It's going to be more for the players, but there's still going to be, a cap. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have those characteristics, and we're just trying to be ahead of the game and planning that out. So when we need to press the go button, it's ready. We don't want to be looking around guessing what we're going to do. We're going to have our plan in place. So, this is with the bye week. It doesn't mean it's an off week, as you know.
It's
may
like
not practice every day,
yeah.
But we had a time with a few of us that were focused on our latest iteration of that. Him to be able to respond to what he sees and his input, and then we had some great ideas that came out of it, and we'll come back with the next iteration.
With the bye week here, do you have your outfit planned out for next week? Do you have a fedora laid out for next week?
I do.
Is it a new one?
It is.
It's going to be pretty good. I have a question because I don't even know if I know the answer to this, and I've actually been asking myself.
Clip that.
Where did this
I do
start?
ask
Where
him
did this
first.
start?
I do. He doesn't really give me any how should I say it, any suggestions on the lid, but he does on the
feet.
On the feet.
Yeah, he always sends me a picture of which ones. He's always
my dad used to send me in before the Fox Big Noon kickoff. How you wear Jordans and
yeah. He said, "Hey, I got years ago." He said, "Dad, you need to improve your drip." That's the first time I'd heard drip.
Yeah,
just breaking right now, breaking into his terminology a little bit. Where did that start, though? I don't even know. I remember Rose Bowl was one of the first times I remembered seeing you wear a fedora. But when was the first
it started longer than that.
Okay.
People may not know this, but Oklahoma was the first school to break out an alternate uniform, and we did it. Was it 2002 when we had the throwback uniforms to what the teams under Coach Wilkinson wore, which if you remember this year, we had very similar.
It's the same game where that Teddy Lehman picture came from.
That's exactly right. And the reason we did that, it was a way we were opening the stadium, basically the east side of the stadium, sort of celebrating the expansion of the stadium. So we did kind of a throwback, and we're just all playing off the history. It rained that day, so when you see the pictures, they look more maroon than they do crimson. But that was, the material at the time and what they look like soaking wet. But so I tell you that because at that game, I decided I was going to wear what Bud Wilkinson would wear to the game. And so not that I don't wear a suit to the game or a sport coat and tie, but I wore a suit. I had this really skinny tie, and I went and found a fedora. I didn't have one. I went and found one. And so I wore it. And everybody's like, "Hey, that's a great hat," and blah, blah, blah. And then just randomly after that game, the rest of the season, the next year, people kept saying, "Hey, where's your hat? Where's your hat?" Like, I wore it one time, like, what is that? And so then we had another throwback, so I wore it again. And then obviously that just started the questioning, where's your hat? Where's your hat? I'm like, golly, I didn't think people would pay attention that much to what I'm wearing. And this is a true story. I literally got sick of answering the question, where is your hat? That I just decided to start wearing one every game.
It's like the visor. I mean, where's the visor?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how it started. It wasn't really any preconceived anything. It just, I got tired of answering that question. Like, all right, I'll wear the hat, and then I don't have to answer it anymore. And so then it became a thing. Now people are like, "Hey, I got an idea for a hat," and they'll send me something, or I'll see. I usually find them when I'm not looking for them. Mm-hmm. And
trips. There's been a couple of vacations that he's got to carry on a fedora and go through security.
Yeah, because I'll walk by and go, no, that one's legit. You know, like so anyway, that's how it started, and so just kind of stuck.
I always tell people all the time, I'm like, I don't even know where he stores them, but I figured out it's under y'all's bed.
Yeah,
it's like because you got so many. I'm like, and they take these big boxes.
Yes,
I don't know where.
That's awesome. It's like just shoe collection.
It's just because you can't just crunch them up.
Yeah,
then they're
Can't
messed
stack
up.
them. Lord forbid.
Now I do have a few that, if it's raining, it does take a toll on them, and so you have to. There's not many people around here that will take a hat and recondition it and reshape it. So I have to hold on to them when I go to a city that has it.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you had like a hat that was like a beater. Like you got your shoes that are beaters that you just wear around. But, you don't care.
No.
But you got a beater.
No, they're just-
I thought he was gonna say he's got waterproof ones, and I was gonna lose it.
No, the ones that are out of commission, they need to be reshaped. You know.
Yeah, I have to ask you. You're gonna laugh about this. How many times have you wished that I would delete my Twitter or X?
I lost count.
Well,
Well, when it's in really bad, I've reached out and said, take that down.
There's been a couple times, not as much as people think though. And
I don't see them all, candidly.
because they're during the game and you're so busy.
Yeah, I don't see them. So, but if I do see one that is out of line, yes, I have said,
that's
take
not,
that one down.
That's not that often.
Now, you're your own person. You can decide.
My mom's
You know,
asked me to take things down before.
Yeah.
Barely, but
But,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I mean, maybe some negative flack here and there. Look what your son tweeted. He's an idiot, whatever. But you've also gotten asked like, "Hey, you're funny on Twitter," and
That is true.
you're like, "That's not me."
That is true. Just just a few months ago, people come up and go, "Hey, I really love your Twitter game." And I said, "Isn't it X?"
yeah.
So, well, you know what I mean. You have Twitter and you have Instagram. You're posting a lot. And I said, "Thanks, but that's not me."
It's not me.
Yeah, so,
Oh god.
So maybe they do get confused. I always have to add the junior. I'm like, it's my opinion, not theirs. Said opinions
It's
are
like
my own.
it's like being a twin. I'm like, is that Drake Stoops? I'm like, buddy's in LA.
I'll tell you, I feel bad about you a couple of times. We were at the softball game a few months ago, and they're like, Drake. You're like, no.
now,
It doesn't bother me,
Yeah.
It's like I'm his twin brother.
Isaac, I would tell you though that I don't necessarily censor everything because he's his own person.
Clearly not.
But there are some that, quite candidly, I couldn't have put out. But I'm rolling, laughing. So I go, no, that was pretty good.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. But there are some that I wouldn't have put out. But I will say that it has impacted me. I can't drive by an Arby's now and not start laughing.
Arby's, yeah.
I'm telling you, that's why you got to fire off every tweet because you never know which one's going to lead you to an Arby's commercial. And I thought that was like a bad tweet.
Hey, and he's not the only one that
I had like
influenced.
10 favorites
I
before.
mean, our guy Eddie Radosevich, I kind of marked down what he did during the coaching search. Somebody sent it to me about the bus stop.
Yeah.
That was still my favorite
It's
tweet
legendary,
of all time.
yeah.
It's when,
So I just filed it away, said, hey, maybe there'll be a use for this. And literally, I told Eddie this, that I was up in Oklahoma City and was after literally a Board of Regents meeting. And Larry Nafee, my deputy AD, and I were driving back to Oklahoma. And I said, hey, wait, stop. Turn over here. We've got to go down to the bus station. And he said, why? And I said, I just in case I need this, And literally, I went down to the Greyhound bus station in Oklahoma City, which is on the east side of town.
Uh-huh.
And we pulled up in this big area, and there's probably 4 or 5 buses, and some are getting off, some are loading. And I said, just park the car here and just come take a picture. And people are like, what is going on here? And I just snapped the picture, and then we got in the car and drove off. I just filed it away.
No, that was a good one. You never know when you have content.
It's so
and then
good,
the favorite tweet is, on the plane, y'all are circling Max Westheimer. Ton of people outside, and you tweet from the plane. Eddie Rado said, the bus is arriving.
That's it.
That is still my favorite tweet of all time.
That's great.
Well, I just, look, I realize that there's a lot of stuff I don't see, and I can't I mean, I don't have anybody doing Twitter for me, so I can't keep up with all of it. But occasionally there's something that just makes its way into, consciousness. And, I've been actually, the first 2 or 3 games, I was out doing my game day walk through early in the morning, and I'd go by Lindsay Street in the tailgate, and I'd
Where's Eddie?
no Eddie.
I saw
Where's
those
Eddie?
tweets.
And so then the third game, I just started interviewing people. Have you seen Eddie? No. And I'm like, who's Eddie?
Yeah, everyone's who's Eddie? That was cracking me up.
So you just have to have some fun with it when you can.
I'm starting to think, is Eddie top 5 celebrity in Oklahoma that's had a rise in the last 5 years, 6 years? Makes you think.
Well, started with that touchback, the kneel in the end zone. Legend.
I don't know. We're thinking about it. I know Eddie will say he's #1 influencer in Oklahoma. So, hey, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
man.
thank you.
Appreciate it, big dog.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's an honor to be part of the family business.
You guys started it, so.
True to the name today.
No, I just got to say, we referenced it a little bit earlier, but this is kind of a unique moment for me, to be able to sit here with the two of you and, obviously being his father and watching him and his brother grow up, but growing up with you and Drake and Mackie and the coaching staff families, it just seems that we had a lot of the same age kids at the same time that grew up together.
It really was.
It was a distinct lifelong honor for me to work with your father for 18 years. That just doesn't happen in college athletics. Probably won't happen anymore, in the world going forward, or at least if it does, it's going to be highly rare. But it's great. It's kind of a full circle moment. I had a similar one a couple of weeks ago when Trey Young asked me to be on his podcast, and I walk in and there's Winston.
Winston, yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really great. Again, watching all you guys grow up, and I just want to tell you how proud I am of you all and the men you become, and it's been an honor to be watching that all those times.
Oh, well, thank you. That was such a hard
so sentimental. Yeah. So, no, but I mean it. It's true.
No, I
it's true.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, big dog.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. But for everybody watching, if you're shedding a tear right now, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Helps us help you. We'll catch you next week with another edition of The Family Business. Remember to keep it in the family.